I don't know how well it worked, but
Right, right.
all right, man. Yay! Here we go.
Nice.
All right, thank you for listening to Strong Calm Podcast. My name is Aaron Dunn, and this is Strong Calm, the podcast where you come to get advice, actionable tips, and stories from professionals who have already done this. They've developed strong communication skills, strong community building skills, and therefore have built strong company, whether that's the company that they've built, like their business, or the company that they keep, like their network. I've got a strong, calm person, strong commie, communicator, community builder, my friend Carlos Cuadros.
Hey, what's up?
Oh, not much, man. Not much. Just hustling.
Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, man. Thanks for being on here. We've worked on projects together. We met, 2 or 3 years ago, 4 years ago?
I believe it was 2016, around January, somewhere around there. No,
Okay.
2017, January.
Yeah. And we got to work on some stuff. Carlos is a content creator, a marketing consultant, a video editor, he's just kind of a jack of all trades, which you kind of have to be in this world, but definitely a specialist in a few different zones. So I'm going to let Carlos describe himself. Introduce yourself, Carlos. Who are you? And, I'm terrible at intros, as it turns out.
No, that was a very good intro. I like to think of myself as a filmmaker, but with the whole social media stuff, you kind of have to do a little bit more to not only market yourself but survive and help other people and just kind of like you always have to like learn to do different stuff. So I would consider myself a filmmaker first and foremost, and then probably like a content creator, consultant, all that stuff down the line.
Awesome. Yeah. You've definitely always had a focus on film and videos. Why that?
Because I've loved movies ever since I was a little kid. I've always been entertained by movies, just like a lot of people. And the first time I picked up a camera was when my family used to record weddings and parties and stuff like that. And when I would watch them, I would like notice that the camera was very shaky, and that kind of like bothered me. I was like, next time I'll be the one holding the camera, and then I was the one holding it during parties and stuff, and that just felt good in my eyes, and I don't know, and then I just followed that, and then it just evolved to like me wanting to create story and work with other people. It's just fun for me. Yeah.
Right on. So are you, tell people where you're working right now, what you're working on. What's your day-to-day work like at the moment?
So right now I am in Los Angeles. I moved here about a year and a half ago. I work at a rental shop, which rents like camera equipment and like everything you need from like audio, cameras, lenses, all that kind of stuff. And it's been a really good job because as a filmmaker myself, I tend to get little gigs here and there on the side. So whenever I need a camera or a light or whatever it is, I could just use the ones from work. So it kind of works mutually, So it's been pretty great. And my day to day, whenever I'm not working at the rental shop, I'm trying to get gigs or do a project with friends or just stay creative in one way or another. And currently I'm involved with a couple of different organizations that involve like social media, content creation, and just filming stuff and just trying to stay busy.
Awesome. I love that. I love what you're doing with your work because, you're working at a rental shop right now, the film shop. And it's one thing that I think is really that people don't, it's a underappreciated thing that you can do, stepping stone that you can do in a career when you can take what you're passionate about and your creative outlet and integrate it with whatever you're doing in your actual work life. Like, even if you don't want to run a film rental shop, like you're not looking to do that in your, professional career necessarily and start this business. You're trying to do a different business. It's still complementary to your set of skills. And so you're always in your own element, whether you're working for somebody else or working for yourself and what you really want to be focused on.
Right.
I love that. So I just wanted to commend you for that because, you could work anywhere, but you're smart about it. And I just think that more people should think about where they're working and as it relates to what they want to be doing later, because it's definitely an awesome stepping stone.
Well, when I first moved, I kind of had saved a couple $1,000s to move over here, and for the first 2 months, I was kind of like doing a bunch of visiting different places and being like the most hardcore tourist, going everywhere. But then, money started getting low, and I was like, oh snap, I need to work. It was kind of that honeymoon phase of like, living somewhere. I didn't want to like work, somewhere where it didn't help me, I guess, grow in the field that I want to pursue. So literally what I did, I just went to Google and I like typed in camera rental houses in Los Angeles. And I literally sent an email to like all of them, and 3 of them replied. And the one that I'm at was one of the ones that replied. And I just didn't want to work at a store or a restaurant or something like that. So
Yeah.
I was very fortunate that my boss needed somebody.
Right. But hey, man, respect the hustle. That's awesome. Like, you went out and did it. And that's why I, wanted to pick up the phone or, send you the IG DM and invite you to be on the podcast, because I think a lot of people can learn from you you're somebody who grew up in a relatively smaller area, right, in Texas?
Yes. So I grew up in McAllen, Texas, or like the RGV as they call it, Rio Grande Valley. And yeah, it's relatively small, but it's growing now. But as far as filmmaking, there are some developments that have been there as far as filmmaking, but it's not huge. So definitely and then I moved to Tyler after I graduated college because I was born in Tyler. So I was like, you know what? I've always wanted to live there. So I went, tried to test the waters, see how I felt, because I had never like lived away from home. So then I went and I was like, okay, it's not so bad. Came back home to the RGV and then saved money to come to LA because, I was like, nothing's holding me back. I shouldn't, why not?
Yeah, why not? That's legit. We all missed you when you left, and we still miss you now. But let's get into the COM. Let's get into the COM. I didn't explain that in the intro this time. So if you're new to the podcast, COM, COM, it's the root word for together or in common. Stands for communication, community, and company. I touched on it, but I just wanted to make sure we hit that. And so we're going to go through the 3 C's. It's the crux of the podcast. And first things first, we're going to talk about communication, the subject of communication. And if you go to Carlos's website, it's sparktrist.com. Sparktrist.com. That's SPARKTREST. And Carlos, how about you tell people what is Sparktrist?
It's basically 2 words, spark, like the light sparking. And then interest, I just thought it'd be a fancy word to catch people's attention. Because I tend, as a filmmaker, there's different types of filmmakers they put the most valuable thing first. Like some filmmakers put like how the frame looks, or the color, or the camera movements, or like the composition, all that kind of stuff. And I'm the type of filmmaker that tends to put the story first, above everything else. So I tend to concentrate more on story versus like, oh, what type of camera am I using, or what type of setting or whatever. So Spark Trust is kind of like a model for saying like a model for saying sparking interest in every story. It's kind of like the whole thing behind the name. So I just liked it, how it sounded, and yeah, that's why I made it up.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. It's a creative idea, and everybody who has a story to tell wants to make it interesting. So there's a lot of uninteresting stories out there. So, man, from working alongside you and seeing you work here in Tyler, and then seeing you work from afar, I've seen a lot of your work. Like I've seen you in a bunch of different, realms, like the Discovery Science place here in Tyler, to the coffee outside that we did with our other friend Carlos, with our mutual friend Carlos, the other Carlos.
Yeah.
But then the stuff that you've worked on with, the network that you've built in LA, different commercials and stuff that you've done. You've done a lot of work in a lot of different industries. How many stories would you say you've told over the past few years, at least since I've known you? Like, give me a ballpark answer if you can, or an exact if you got it.
No, I don't know the exact number, but if by stories you're referring to like videos that I've done, it's probably around a good like 100, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So if we want to put it into like videos that I've done for people, so yeah, approximately about 100, somewhere around that realm, a little bit less, I think, probably around 80, more than 80, less than 100, somewhere around there.
Yeah, and they're in a lot of different industries, and it's just a lot of different things. You're kind of you've got a lot of different experience and insight into different ways of telling a story for different use cases. So for you, what makes a story interesting? If you want to spark interest in every story, what makes a story interesting? What are those components, and how do you approach when somebody says, "Yeah, I want to tell a story about my business," or whatever it is? How do you start with that focus?
Right. So I think one of the biggest things for storytelling is being able to be in the person's shoes, or like whoever the story is about. So like if it's a video about your podcast, or like promoting your podcast, something like that, I would have to think about what it is that you feel about doing this. So as long as I know that, and being able to show that to the audience so they could connect with you, like, oh, he likes doing podcasts because he's really wants to help people spread their message. So people would connect with like, oh, look, he likes helping people. Like, I understand how the feeling of helping others. So it all begins with understanding the person who I'm doing the video for. Like, I tend to not, when I first talk to somebody about doing a video, most of the times, there are a few times where it's mostly like, oh, make it look good and add this and add that. But for the most part, it begins with getting to know the person, what they want. It's not like, oh, I show up and they're like, oh, you need to do this and you need to do that and this to have a good video. It's more about getting to know the person.
I like that. I like that. And I like what you said about the feeling, like how you turned it on me and said, how would I feel? Like, how do I want to make people feel about, the work that I'm doing and things like that, and honing in on the feeling. That's pretty, I think that's pretty interesting to take it from that realm, because like you said, yeah, I want to make it look cool and pretty and use this lens or something like that. But it's really the feeling that's going to effectively communicate.
And sometimes at work, I get phone calls from people who are like, call and they ask me like, hey, what's the most cinematic lens that I could use for my video? And sometimes I tend to answer, oh, this lens would help. But uh, on more occasions, I ask them more about their project. It's like, oh, well, what are you trying to convey? What emotion? A little. It's not necessarily about the camera itself or the lens. It's more about your idea that you're trying to convey to your audience. So as long as you understand the story first, then you'll know what lens to use or what light or et cetera, et cetera.
I love that. So just before we started recording, you showed me that something you were working on, like you were doing some storyboarding, kind of sketching some scenes out and stuff like that. Seems like it's a regular part of your process. I kind of a two-parter question. What part of the process is that? And like, what are kind of the steps that you would take maybe before and after? And then actually just answer that. And then I got another follow-up.
Sure. Well, actually, storyboarding tends to be not that common with what I tend to do, because it's more kind of like when it's like a film or some sort of like scene, which I don't do a lot. Most of the work I do is kind of like documenting things or like events or people, which I tend to like show up to. Like I have a storyboard in my head, but like it's not really necessary for those type of projects because it's relatively simple. So most of the times I have it in my head and then I just shoot what's in my head. But for something like this, which I'm actually getting ready to shoot a short scene about 20 pages with my roommate and another friend. So we're like using our living room to like shoot the whole thing, and we're going to use it for our portfolios. Two of them are actors, and then I'm going to use it as my part of my cinematography reel as well. So we're kind of like helping each other. And for something like this, since it's so dialogue heavy, and I kind of need to have a storyboard because it's 20 pages long, and I need to make it easier. Like, oh, we filmed this. Okay, what's next? What's next? It's kind of like more for like saving time. But storyboarding is very helpful when one, you have a lot of help with you. Like I've done a video for a restaurant. I'll give you a good example. Like I went to the restaurant and I'd have a storyboard ready because it was kind of like relatively simple of what I needed. Kind of like a shot of the outside, the shot of it inside, them cooking, food, close-ups, people eating. Since I kind of have a little bit more experience dealing with that, I don't really need it. I didn't really need a shot list or a storyboard because I've done it so many times. But when it's like a narrative film or short film, then that's when I tend to need a storyboard because it just helps make the whole process easier.
Got it. So my follow-up, what I wanted to ask after that is, how do you know you have the right story when you're working on a project? How do you know that it's done? You're in this process of kind of sketching it out, or maybe even just thinking it through in your head. Like I've done some videos for work where, I usually keep it on my phone. Like I'll just keep, the notes, the checklist essentially on my phone because I'm forgetful. But, also kind of keeps the organizational aspect. But how do you know when you're like, oh, I got it, after you've kind of worked it through with the team and what have you? How do you know you have the right story that's going to have the emotional hook and deliver the interesting take that your client's looking for?
Are you referring to like shots, like the shots they get?
I mean, you could talk about shots, but I guess I was really talking about like the narrative piece, like when you know you have like that good idea. That you're
Right.
like, oh, this is the one that we should commit our time to. And, like you said, like you've got 20 pages of dialogue. Like, how do you know when that's like, oh, yeah, we got it. We're done.
Well, the good thing is that I actually didn't write it. I didn't have to write the 20 pages. My friend Harry, who's going to be acting, he wrote it. So what we've done in the past with since we kind of like help each other out, we've written stuff together and then we like shoot it. So we're kind of like just helping each other out and we're learning. So, as long as we think that the story is good, that as long as it interests all of us, then we just do it. We're not really like, oh, it doesn't have this or it doesn't have that. We just tend to do things not only to grow as artists, but just to get better and just to have that experience of shooting things. Now, when it comes to shooting for like a client or something like that, it all depends on what they're looking for. Like for example, I'll go again to the restaurant. The owner wanted to put an emphasis on the Italian food being Italian food, not like Olive Garden or like authentic Italian food. So I knew that the story was done or finished whenever I like hit all the emotions of like who he is, how did he get started, what makes him different from other restaurants, what can they expect. You have to like have these questions answered as you're doing the project, because I interviewed him and then I got the shots of like the restaurant and stuff. So like I made sure that the stuff that I shot, that I hit all the points. Like for example, he said that he opened the restaurant a couple of years ago, so I made sure I got shots of the restaurant to like show how he takes care of it and stuff. And then he talked about the food and how it's authentic, so I made sure I got good shots of the food. And then when he was talking about what could people expect, I got shots of like the customers eating the food. So like when it comes something to that, as long as I hit all the points that they talk about like during an interview, then that's when I know that I'm good, that everything's covered.
Awesome. That's great.
But
So
it's all a learning process, as filmmakers and artists, we always try to learn to become better at our craft. It's not like, oh, that's when I know it's good. You just have to like do it to get better at whatever it is that you're trying to do.
yeah, I like how you said that earlier too, of just like when you're working with your peers and then you say, everybody, you kind of have buy-in from everyone that, yeah, this is good. This is, something that we can move forward with. And, it seems kind of like a theme in your career of you get a spark of inspiration,
Yeah.
and then you go do it. Like you started in school and then you went to school and you did it. And then you said, well, now I'm going to go to Tyler, and you did it. And then you went, well, now I'm going to go back home and save some money, and then I'm going to go to California and I'm going to do it. And that's what I appreciate, because you're constantly adding to your skill set and your network, because you're not afraid of getting it perfect. You want to do quality work, of course, deliver what you promise to a client or what have you, but you also want to just be able to scratch your creative itch. And the best way to learn, it seems so often, is to just deliver, just do it.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I want to talk to you about community. So we're going to shift a little bit into the second C of community. and how because I want to talk to you really specifically about the Texas to California leap, because that's a big leap, man. You're in the big leagues. This is, and Tyler, there's other filmmakers here, there's other video people here, but I imagine there's a billion over there in LA. There's a high concentration.
Yeah.
I mean, you're talking about,
if you throw a rock, you're gonna hit someone that's a filmmaker.
yeah, exactly, or an actress or something.
Yeah.
So first, just kind of on a general level, like, how has travel influenced how you work with people? Like, how is living in a few different places, and then especially coming from Texas to California, how has that influenced how you work and find work?
Right. So I was kind of lucky when I moved to California, because when I first moved, I started living at this type of like hostel where it's like a bunch of artists, and they're all filmmakers, actors, models, et cetera, dancers. So I was lucky to live there for a couple months, and I hit the ground running, because as soon as I got there, there was like a film race going on. I don't know if you've ever heard of that. So it's basically like you got 48 hours to like film, shoot, record, edit like a short film. So right away I started helping people, and just helping other people doing their projects. Whenever I had a project, since I helped them, they were like willing to help. So by just lending a hand and being helpful, that's how it opened doors for me to get other people to help me in exchange.
Awesome. So yeah, I wanted to ask you about your experience there. We've chatted about it a little bit when you first started, because like I kept seeing like just different stuff you were doing. It was so interesting. So on your site, it's UpStart. Is that what it's called?
Yeah, UpStart Creative Living.
So essentially, it's like, I mean, maybe for lack of a better analogy or whatever, it seems like real world for creative people. Is that a accurate description?
It's basically like a college dorm, to be quite honest, because like everybody's like into what you're into, so you got like lots to talk about. Like everybody's into like filmmaking and acting and modeling, so like you got infinite amount of subjects to touch to talk about. So it was fun, but there's a lot of different people that you could meet there, that I met there. And yeah, it's like a really great place to live for a while when you're transitioning from another place to over here. Because first you meet a lot of people, you network, you work with different types of talents. There was even like voiceover artists, there was dancers, there was like graphic designers. I met two people who worked on like making the trailers for movies. So they would like put the music and cut it and everything. So it was really a great environment to land here in LA when I first moved.
Definitely, because then you're kind of already plugged into a few other creative people, and you've kind of got that base of support.
Yeah.
As you're there, and you get to work with them. So that's, it's just like a double, triple whammy. I didn't even know a place like that existed.
Yeah.
I'm not surprised, but how did you find it?
I was just like looking on Facebook, because they have, pages where they put like their houses or apartments for rent. And I just saw an ad, or like a post where it had really cheap rent, relatively to what you normally pay. But it was like a really beautiful apartment with lots of like, there was like a theater room, there was like a study room, there was like a little gym and a bunch of little stuff like that. So I was like, whoa, that's cheap for that. And then I just applied, and I just talked to the manager, asked her information, and yeah, then I just decided to make the deposit and come from Texas to LA without, most people when they move there, they visit it first and they do a tour, you know, and then they move in. But I didn't do that. I just like saw the pictures and chatted on the phone for a little bit, and then I just like made the decision to do it, and then I moved. And then when I got there the first day, that's when I saw it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Man, commit first, figure it out later. I love it. I love it. So, talking about community, living in, it's kind of a dormitory with a bunch of creative people like that. That's a pretty unique experience. You talked about, the value of meeting with like-minded people. With those connections that you made, are there any kind of like any lessons that you learn from that experience that you'll take with you, like as you continue to grow? How do you look back upon that? Like, was there any story or takeaway that you're like, man, that was worth this much or whatever?
Well, to be honest, I'm still with in communication with the people that live there, because we have like a Facebook group where like people make announcements, they post jobs, they post, if people need actors, they make a post like, hey, looking for actors, etc., etc. And yeah, I met most of the people I know in LA, like 99% of them is because of UpStart. I literally met somebody, like my roommate, Meredith. I met her because she was working on a music video as a makeup artist, and she wasn't necessarily an UpStart, but because of UpStart, like one of the members who was making the music video, I helped him, and then I met her there, and it's just opened doors to a lot of friendships. So I definitely think it was worth the risk of moving to a place I hadn't visited before. But yeah, it's I still talk to a lot of people, and it's definitely a great place to live.
Yeah, that's so awesome. That's the power of community. You know what I mean? It's just when you can find like-minded people that are along your same trajectory, at least the same sense of overall mission, which is have a successful career in a creative field and storytelling and content. However you want to group that set of skills together, then you're going to have a lot of connection. And then, of course, grow because of it.
Yeah.
Okay, so now I want to ask you the village question. So the village question, recurring question for every guest that is on the StrongCom podcast. The village question is this. Imagine if you were creating a village. Okay. So it's, Sparktress City, if you will, or, so I won't name your village. It's your village. But so imagine you're making a village. There's nobody in the village yet. So you have to attract people to get there.
Yeah.
But you want to attract the right people. Right. So you have 4 signs that are facing, the 4 different directions, north, south, east, west. And you can only put one value or principle on each one of the signs.
Oh, wow.
So to attract people that you want to be around and live with in your village. So what are the 4 values or principles that you would put on those 4 signs?
Oh, wow. Well, for sure, one of them would be hardworking. It's rare to find people who are very hardworking when it's like not their project. For example, when I first arrived to LA, I helped out other people in their projects, and I kind of like gave my best with whatever I was doing, regardless of whose project it was. Because if I was on the other side and I had somebody helping me, I would want them to do their best. So definitely someone who's hardworking and willing to learn. So I guess one of them would be hard worker. I don't know another word. But yeah, just a hard worker. Another one would be probably someone who's open-minded. Because in LA, There's a lot of, different things that you would see, relatively to somewhere else. It's like, what, did I just see that? Or, there's different ways of going through your day-to-day life and experiences that you would not see somewhere else. So hard work, being open-minded, but not only that, but like being open-minded to like ideas, because sometimes you meet people who are like so set on their way of thinking or their way of doing things that they close themselves to like doing other things. Um, so just open-mindedness. Okay, another one would probably be so 4 values. So hard work, open-mindedness. Someone who's I don't know. This is a hard question. So a village with 4. So I would have to have people with these 4 values, right?
Yeah.
Or they would have to have at least one of them.
Or at least one of them. Yeah. They don't have to have all 4, but at least one of them to get them in the door. At least they can, you can let the rest of the village, teach the others. But to give you some time, I love that you said hardworking, and I love that you said open-mindedness. It's fun doing this question and throwing it on people, because I get different answers every single time. Everybody that I've asked, there's no 2 are really the same at all. They're all very uniquely different based on their life experience and profession and all kinds of stuff. And it's been real fun to listen to. But hard work and being open-minded, I can imagine how. I mean, it seems that LA is a great place for those 2 things, you would think. I mean, because I imagine you can't make it there if you're not those 2.
Yeah, another one I just thought of would be probably honesty. That would be another one, because you don't want to have a village of liars.
True.
And then the 4th one, I guess I would say it would be committed. People who are committed to an idea or a mission, a goal, whatever the purpose of this village is. I don't know why I would create a village, but people who are committed to to whatever we're trying to do. Like I'm assuming if I create a village, it would probably be for creating a movie or something, or I don't know, something related to my field, but committed. Yeah.
Awesome. I love it.
So
great job.
Commitment, honesty, open-mindedness, and hard worker.
Yeah, that sounds good. Thank you for that. All right.
Good question.
Thanks. So let's go to company. So this is kind of where the communication and community come together. Mm-hmm. And because, I don't think you can have good relationships with other people if you don't have shared values and good communication skills. Mm-hmm. And every business is really just a people business. So it's all about connecting with other people, having a value exchange that is fair and agreed upon. And so it's connected in your personal life and in your business. So in terms of company, you've talked about working and doing some side projects, if it's for free and just kind of a passion project, or for paid clients and stuff outside of your job. And I just wanted to ask about, your experience starting your own business, because, you're a young guy like myself. It can be kind of a scary thing to do that, to kind of put yourself out there and say, okay, I'm going to try to make a go of this and earn my own income with the skills I've developed. So if you could just kind of share your experience within that, and like if you have any tips for anybody that's wanting to follow in your footsteps, do something similar, be a filmmaker, what would you recommend people do and think about when starting your own business as a filmmaker, creative content person today?
Well, I don't have that much experience as far as like being knowledgeable and giving advice as far as what to do logistically. I'm still learning myself, but one thing that I definitely recommend that I recently got, or like about a couple of months ago, that has really helped me out is this application called QuickBooks. I don't know if you've heard of it, but that has made life so much easier. It's literally saved my life because as a freelancer, as a someone who does videos for people, it's not a regular job, so you kind of like have to declare your receipts and do quarterly taxes and all that stuff. So it's a kind of a scary thing if you've never kind of like done it before, which I was scared, but I got it, and it's really super freaking easy. Like it's makes things so easy. And then I guess another thing I would recommend for those starting out as a filmmaker would be to just like, you know, we tend to think of like, oh, everything has to be perfect in order to like start shooting something or whatever. But I started out with like a really cheap camera, doing pictures and doing stuff for free so I could learn. But I would just recommend for people just to like pick up a camera and start taking pictures of your family or of your dog or whatever. Just practice and just start doing it. And then I would definitely recommend reaching out to somebody who's already doing it. Someone, it could be local. So you could like shadow them and just like learn whatever they're doing. And that way it'll be like really fast. It'll be faster than if you were to do it by yourself. And then also recommend YouTube videos, because I definitely watched a lot of YouTube videos when I was starting. But yeah, just like doing it and reaching out to people and working together and learning from each other. That's what I would recommend. Yeah, because I'm still learning. It's not.
Yeah. Awesome. I'll have to check out that QuickBooks app. Sounds like a. Let's see. So when you're not working, man, what are you doing? Because you're always working. What are you doing?
Well, I like to watch movies, not only for entertainment, but to learn. As far as like, because I'm also trying to write. I'm trying to be more of a writer, because it's kind of like a niche I've been wanting to scratch. Because I used to write in high school and I liked it, but I stopped, and it always felt good doing it, but it's different writing an essay in high school or college versus like writing a story with beginning, middle, and end. So whenever I watch something, I try to like learn something from the story, or if it's not story, it's like composition as far as like the way it was shot, or like anything really. But yeah, I like to watch movies and shows and just learn from it.
That's awesome. So it shows how much of a committed person you are, in that, like, I ask you, what do you do when you're not working? And you say, well, I'm learning about, you're essentially like learning and focusing, and it's always on your mind.
Well, I mean,
that's pretty awesome.
If you were to like see me, you would probably like, oh, he's just watching TV or whatever. But like, I mean, yeah, but like, it may seem like I'm just relaxing, but like I'm taking stuff out of it. Like I'm learning. Oh, it's really good writing because they mentioned this idea in the beginning of the show, and then they brought it back towards the middle, and then at the end they like evolved into a different thing or whatever. So
what are some of your favorite shows or movies in the last like 6 months? Do you have like a Netflix recommendation or a movie that I need to go see that I haven't watched yet?
So believe it or not, I've never seen that show Friends, like, so I barely started watching it. Um, my roommate Meredith recommended it, and we started watching it. And yeah, like the show is like comedy, but behind it, um, there's like a message of like being friends and like holding each other accountable and like helping each other during tough times. Like it's like comedy, but deep down, there's like a really good message. Like there was this episode where Joey gets his stuff taken away because he can't afford his place, and then he's got a fight with Ross, and he's like, "Tell me everything's gonna be good," and then Ross. I don't know if you're familiar with the characters, but you know he tends to be very like straightforward, like, "Oh, you need to get a job," blah, blah, blah. And Joey's the complete opposite of that. He's like, "No, I need to feel like I'm good. Like you need to tell me that everything's gonna be all right." So they're two contrasting types of people, and then they get in a fight, and then towards the end of the show, they come to terms and like, you know, they're like, "Oh, I was just trying to help you," and then, you know, because Joey didn't want to get a regular job because he's an actor, and you know, it's definitely not the most stable job. So he decides to like, okay, I'm gonna do what Ross tells me, get a regular job and try to like, you know, build from there. So it was a lesson on friendship, but that's just one example. And then I also watch there's this show called the OA.
Yeah.
Lots of shows, but yeah, I take something away from all the shows I watch. The Office is another one. I love.
The Office is hilarious. I love The Office. Talk
There's
about strong writing.
yeah,
I want to highlight just real quick what you talked about Friends, and I think there's a lot of fans of The Office, and there's a lot of fans of Friends, and you know the OA. I watched the first season. It's a weird show, but it's a good one. But you know these cult classics, these Office and Friends. The cool thing about those is that as you rewatch them, you're watching it with fresh eyes, but you know there's always something to learn from excellent storytelling when it's done at such a high level, like
mhm,
you said, and like you know how you framed up that simple episode of the contrast between Ross and Joey. I just want to highlight that point because it's the power of contrast as a way to frame a story. So if anybody's trying to create a story of some kind, or work on their brand or what have you, how can you inject contrast into your story? Is it how you contrast with someone else, or how you contrast with whatever the objective that you have is? Like there's just a big lesson in utilizing those types of storytelling elements
mhm,
from the onset,
yeah,
and saying how can I inject contrast into the story that I'm trying to tell, to make it more engaging. So I
right,
just wanted to highlight that because
yeah,
you pointed that out because you're somebody who's actively trying to write those
yeah.
stories. So it's cool that you pull those nuggets out, and I think when you are go ahead.
Oh, sorry, just so I could add something before I forget. And the reason why I think The Office is such a popular show is because of what I was talking to you about before, about being empathetic and being able to connect with the other person. And a lot of people have worked in an office environment, so they kind of like relate to the characters in the same way that I was telling you that when I do a video, I try to connect with the person first, find out what they want in order to be able to um, show that to the audience and have a connection.
Love it. I want to ask you about how storytelling builds business, because ultimately, if you're working for a client, that's what you want to do. If it's a commercial or if it's ongoing social media content, what have you, can you speak to that that aspect of it, of like using story for business. It's a big, it's a big thing now. Like, so much, it's almost a buzzword. Storytelling is almost a buzzword in marketing speech, how you got to kind of craft your story. But do you have any thoughts on that, and how a businesses, small or large, or individuals can inject story to further their margins and make QuickBooks smile at them?
Yeah. So a lot of people, nowadays, a lot of people don't like to be sold to. Like, they don't want to be like talked to, like if someone's trying to sell them something. So the nowadays, what the polar opposite of that is branding yourself or your story or whatever it is that you're about. Because, for example, like this podcast, if I was trying to sell my services, I would not go it about the way of like, hey guys, such and such video would cost you whatever. The whole point of a podcast is to be able to get to know a person, so they could share their story and kind of like talk about what they like, what they don't like, what they're all about. And with that story, if someone were to like if someone were to watch and they were like, hey, I like how that guy thinks or whatever, then they're more likely to go to my website or my social media and try to connect with me and build through there, versus trying to meet, like me trying to talk about my pricing and stuff like that.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And I think podcasting is it's the reason I have one, is it's just such a powerful form of getting to know people and really just get an understanding of, hey, do I want to work with this person? And you could the power of story, like you said, like your story is powerful because it shows somebody who you're willing to take risks, you're willing to go the distance and take chances and try new things, but all within reason. You don't do it like a crazy person. You do it as in a series of steps, and like all those things that you embody, essentially your story that you're living out, is really truly your best pitch. Even though you're going to write, you could say, you could write an ad and say, hey, come give me money, bottom line prices. That's not the case. They're looking for you.
Yeah, because nowadays, your whole brand is about being able to connect with people. And the way you connect with people is by just talking about your story, or not necessarily being salesy. I don't know if that makes sense, like a salesperson, but more of like opening the doors to what you're about. I mean, I don't know, I'm pretty sure you're a follower of Gary Vaynerchuk, but he's like a big believer in just putting out stuff that shows who you're all about. And he often says that you could like make a living off of like selling Smurfs. Because there's like an audience out there for everybody. So you just have to share your story, and people, it's like a funnel. Not everybody's for you, but some of them are for you. You're not going to please everybody, but there's going to be a certain amount of people out there that like what you're all about, and it's going to build a community that way.
I couldn't agree more.